Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be responding to a person who is looking at going back to school for possibly botany or something in conservation so they can work in an environmentally related field as they're burnt out in their current job as a journalist. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. They start, in high school I was pretty good at two things, biology and writing. I'm from rural Norrisville, USA, so I figured I was sort of a big fish, small pond type of smart and would never be able to hack it in a science major at any respectable university. So I landed on journalism as my field of study. I'm one of the lucky ones. Not a lot of people who study journalism actually end up becoming journalists. And my job is, admittedly, pretty cool. But I'm stressed, burnt out, and perpetually broke. Being constantly plugged into the worst that's happening in the world is exhausting, and I've had to work a second job since graduating just to make ends meet. All of these factors have been physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially chipping away at me for the better half of a decade. It just isn't worth it anymore. So now I'm contemplating making a complete career change, a 180-degree career change, and going back to school to study some kind of biology or environmental science. I think I'd like to be a botanist or work in conservation of some sort. But where do I even begin? Has anyone made a career change of this magnitude that could offer some insight? The idea of starting over is what's keeping me going lately, but it's also completely overwhelming. Any help appreciated. Well, interestingly enough, I actually made a switch from a management job at a large nonprofit into conservation education. So I kind of have a little bit of, I guess, firsthand knowledge of what you're looking at getting into. But before I kind of go into that, some things to consider first is whenever you switch fields, you're going to have to start by weighing the options and laying out the pros and cons of what's important to you and how long you're willing to live with the cons. Now, before you say I've already done that and I'm still frustrated, I mean, have you really sat down and weighed it? And here's what I mean by that, and here's why you need to consider, or some of the things I considered. So how much of a pay cut are you willing to take? The conservation field isn't really a lucrative field for the most part, so I knew I was going to have to take a pay cut for that. And also, I'd be taking one since I was no longer in a management role and starting over in a new industry. You know, that's the same thing you're going to have to do too. So, and I know journalism isn't exactly the most lucrative field anyway either, unless you're talking, you know, you're working for a mega like CNN or something like that. But still, so you're going from possibly a career, like you said, that, you know, financially, it's been financially chipping away at you in the journalism field. And you're also going to be going into a field that also isn't paying really well. So, you know, you may even have to take even more of a pay cut, or you may be in a similar situation that you're in pay-wise. So you got to consider, you know, that. And then you need to consider long-term pay. Because while you're not going to be making money at the beginning, yeah, there's potential to make money as you grow in your career. But, you know, what is that compared to, you know, in terms of maximum potential? What I mean by that is, you know, the conservation field isn't a lucrative field, so you may max out early. And you have to kind of figure out if you're okay with, you know, wherever your max is going to be, is that the most you're okay with making, you know, in the long term? You know, since you said you're perpetually broke now, you know, consider what your finances are going to look like once you've made the switch. For me personally, I had to take a $12,000 pay cut right off the bat, and I was in a position that actually paid fairly well for the position that I moved into compared to other, you know, positions that people would move into. So for me, the most important thing, though, was getting my life back. You know, my job at the nonprofit, I was really burned out, I was stressed out, and I was completely sick of it. And I wanted to completely start over because I figured my mental health was more important than any amount of money I was getting paid. You just couldn't put a price tag on waking up every morning, going to work, and coming home and not hating myself. Now, that being said, a lot of conservation type jobs are paid through grants, so you have to consider the type of job and how stable it is. With the current situation, it's important to know is if this job is going to be there in the long term. Right now, the conservation field it's hurting. This industry took a massive hit with, you know, what's going on, and a lot of people were laid off. So the field is hyper competitive right now. I recommend going and taking a look at the Association of Zoos and Aquariums website. So that's aza.org, and check out what type of jobs they have that are on the site, and that'll kind of give you an idea of what's being hired, and then potential pay ranges. I would also check out the EPA website, Bureau of Land Management, so you can get an idea of what government jobs at the federal level look like. And those are also going to give you an idea of salary expectations. So, and then you mentioned, you mentioned botanist, and that's a fieldwork type position. But is there any other type of work that you want to do in the conservation field? So, you have a journalism degree, so are you interested in public relations for a conservation organization? You want to, do some research and get different ideas of what you want to do, and then talk to someone at a school you're interested in going to and see what their program is like and make sure it matches up with what you want to do. I would highly recommend also volunteering if you're able to at a conservation organization before you work at one, because it can be a culture shock. They run very differently. They have very different standards, the way they operate, especially, and any time you make a career change, it's going to be a culture shock. But conservation tends to run very differently than your run-of-the-mill nonprofit or government-run organization. So it's just, you're going to have to really consider what type of how it fits with the way you work, and then I guess you have to consider, going back to school, how much are you willing to go back into debt? That's the other thing. Going back to school might put even more of a financial strain on you. For me, I didn't have to go back to school since I had enough experience and transferable skills to get hired for the job that I wanted. So you might want to look at jobs that you won't need to go back to school for. Again, public relations or some type of grant writer, since you have skills in writing. Those are also jobs that tend to pay a little bit more in the conservation side of things. And another thing is, if you have a bachelor's already, I don't know that I would consider going back to get another bachelor's. In my opinion, a bachelor's is just kind of it's going to be a waste of your time. Consider getting a master's in something. Could you get a master's in public policy so you can work in environmental policy? If you're interested in botany, could you consider horticulture instead? In which case you could go to a tech school and get a 2-year certificate and be done with it. Again, you would need to really talk to someone at different schools to find out, what the requirements are, if you would have to take the GRE or something like that. But I just, when you look at going back for another bachelor's, are you going to have to take, if you take a master's, you might have to take some prereqs at the undergrad level, but at least you'll have a master's when you're done with it. If you transfer into a school and they don't take all the credits and you have to retake some classes, you're just only going to end up with a bachelor's, So, I just struggle with putting the time and money in to get another bachelor's. But again, that's what you have to consider. At the end of the day, though, like someone mentioned, you just kind of got to go for it. When you've decided you've hit that point, you got to go in 100%. You can't be wishy-washy about it, but you got to commit to your decision. It's going to be scary. It's going to be really frustrating at times. But if you do your homework ahead of time, you should be set up to be really successful. For me, when I moved into the conservation field, one thing I really, really enjoyed was the people that worked in it were really all passionate about the work they did. And it wasn't like a typical nonprofit, because a lot of nonprofits that I've worked for tend to still be very corporate driven. But this, when I was in conservation, I really felt like I was working for something bigger. Like there was a bigger purpose to what I was doing, and I could actually see tangible results of that happening. They did a really good job of showing, here's what the work you're doing is contributing to the work of saving animals or saving ecosystems or whatever. So that was one thing that was really, really cool about it. So that was one of the unique experiences and one of the things that made it worth it for me. The other thing that really made it worth it for me was, it just, like I said, it was you wanted to, it was hard work, but you wanted to work hard because everybody was working hard. And the way the conservation field is shifting now, they've kind of almost gone away from the doom and gloom. So I know you mentioned in your post that you're kind of sick of talking about the doom and gloom every single day. The conservation field has changed a lot of what they've done. They've really gone away from talking about like, oh, if we do this, the world's going to end, or if we don't recycle, then the world's going to, like, all the animals are going to die out or whatever. Like, they've gone away from that targeting. Right now, a lot of places have a policy where everything is positive. Like, there's no, like, you don't even talk about anything negative to kids under the age of 10, fourth grade. It's really about, like, showing them what they can do even at their home. Like, hey, if you just do something simple at home, you can save this species, or if you do that, this can help pollinators, whatever. And so it's really about connecting with people for where they're at and trying to make a difference that way. And that's one thing that I really, really enjoyed about it. And I think for someone that's been around doom and gloom for so long, I think you would really appreciate that too. Anyways, like I said, I have a kind of a unique perspective on this. So if you'd like to talk more, by all means, shoot me a message. I'm more than willing to chat with you. I also do career coaching. So if you're interested in getting some coaching from me, you can definitely, I'm also up for that. Feel free to check out my website, www.pbeatty.com, where you can download a free ebook, which I actually wrote, while I was trying to figure things out myself and switching careers and things like that. So it kind of has some good insight that you might find useful too. Anyways, again, feel free to reach out to me. If not, that's cool too. Anyways, I hope it works out, and good luck, and we will talk to you all soon.